Belgium 2026 qualifying done? Let's talk about it. So maybe this wasn't the most interesting qualifying I ever saw, but there still are some talking points and we're gonna talk about them. So starting off with a Q1, both Aston Martins, two Cadillacs, Ocon and Albon. Now, it's not exactly a surprise that we see Aston Martin at the very end of the field, but what is maybe a little bit shocking even at this point, I know, even now, halfway through the season, it still shocks me that Aston Martin is 3 seconds from Alex Albon in P16, which is absolutely fucking wild. I mean, 3 seconds, I'm not talking to pole, not to pole position, 3 seconds of not even exactly a Q2 time because Albon didn't make Q2, just 3 seconds to the best in Q1. It's just fucking insane. I know next weekend they're gonna have pretty much a brand new car, a B-spec car, but I'm sure that weekend cannot come fast enough for them. I mean, being 3 seconds of P17 at this point is like, when do you pull the trigger and just say enough is enough? We don't know how to build a fucking car. It's just fucking crazy. That being said though, Bottas outqualified Perez, which doesn't happen too often, so you know what? Good for him. Ocon is still having troubles, and I don't think at this point we might not even see Ocon next year. I mean, once again, he got outqualified. Once again, he's stuck in Q1 while his teammate is in Q2, which is obviously not something Ocon wants to have. I have a feeling that if he doesn't step up pretty fast, I feel like something might happen over the summer break because he just can't go like this every single time. Also, Alex Albon is kind of, having a little bit of trouble. By the end of Q1, James said like, oh, good lap, it wasn't too bad, we just need to give you a better car, and it's like, yeah, the car sucks. Yeah, sure, the car absolutely sucks, but at the same time, Sainz is getting into Q2, I wouldn't say often, but more often, and even when he doesn't, he still outqualifies Albon this year on quite a regular basis. Their head-to-head with this qualifying including is 8-2. That is not a good stat for Albon, so I think he also needs to step it up a little bit. I like Albon, and I really hope he finds something in himself. The last thing I would want to see Albon, being let go. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but at some point, if this continues, somebody might start asking questions. But aside from that, nothing too crazy happened in Q1, nothing unexpected either. So let's move into Q2, and that would be Behrman, Sainz, Hulk, Colapinto, Gasly, and Lawson. Not exactly anything spectacular in terms of, some crazy top teams being in Q2 or something. Kind of more or less usual suspects you would expect to go. I guess probably one of the more notable things for me in Q2 was George Russell, even though he made it to Q3, but he was 6/10 of Kimi's time in Q2. 6/10. That is ages in Formula 1, ages. Last year we had like the whole field within like a second or so, and look, I mean, obviously somebody like Aston Martin is just like a completely different story, but George being 6/10 is quite a lot. And it's not like there was anything wrong with the car. Didn't seem like George was like necessarily struggling too much in anywhere. I think he just didn't have the confidence. Bortoleto made it out of Q2, which I guess that could be something to note. Doesn't happen every time. And Hulk lost the car, and thankfully he lost it after the qualifying itself. He had a hydraulic leak, which I'm sure they're gonna fix it. It's not a big deal. It's not like he crashed or anything. Although the way they framed the picture, that the first shot of him was in the gravel, and your immediate thought it was like, oh, holy shit, he just crashed. And then they show you the full replay and he's like, oh, okay, nothing happened. Kind of a weird timing, but it's not on F1 TV, it just so happened to happen. But aside from that, nothing too major to talk about. Like I said, usual suspects, and like I said before, this wasn't the most exciting qualifying in the world. So let's move to Q3. And for Q3, it was Isaac, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lindblad, Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, and Kimi Antonelli. So, first of all, Hajar, I feel like did a pretty good job towing Max. I don't think Max was anywhere remotely even close to P2 if it wasn't for Isaac. So even though maybe it's going to hurt Isaac in the long term, being labeled as a second driver, which, I mean, at least until Max is in the team. That's always going to be the case. But yeah, he did a pretty good job. And, you know, if you take a look at everybody that was in the seat before him, but also not before Checo, everybody kind of failed, and he's kind of doing exactly what Red Bull signed him up to do. So, you know what? Good job. Also, Lando's first lap was just it was absolutely phenomenal. I don't know where that even came from. Like, if it wasn't for his grid penalty, even on his first lap alone, he would still ended up P3. That is amazing. And I think he would have probably improved, and I think he was going to be P2. I don't think he would have been P1, to be honest, but Kimi was fast, like real fucking fast. But I could see Lando being P2 if it wasn't for the grid penalty, but at first lap, chef's kiss. On the other hand, his teammate Piastri, I would say, didn't do that well. He didn't manage to improve on Lando's first lap in his first lap, and neither did he improve on his second lap. And I would say not everybody was improving quite drastically in maybe the second run as you would sometimes expect, but still people did improve. There was definitely room for improvement, but probably the bigger story for me is once again George Russell. He was half a second from Kimi. He's P4. Lando beat him on his first lap, and Lando isn't even remotely close to Kimi's time. And George is P4, half a second away from Kimi, half a fucking second. In Q2 he was 6/10, and then in a Q1 he was half a second away. It's just not acceptable. Like, if you're Toto Wolff, at what point do you start, you know, looking at this and saying, maybe we start making calls? Maybe we see who's out there and what are our options, right? Because Kimi is doing phenomenal. Clearly, car is not a problem. Kimi is doing amazing. Kimi is pretty much in league of his own, and George just cannot match him. And even when Kimi is unlucky and something happens and maybe he loses, you know, positions in the start, and yeah, he has those mistakes, and I'm sure as time goes by he will improve on those mistakes and they will go away. This is only his second season, right? Once those mistakes go away from him, at that point, it's like, can't George even do anything to him? Like, George isn't even remotely close now, and even when Kimi does mistakes, usually he's like right on George's gearbox by the end of any race, pretty much, even when he loses like 5, 6, 7 positions at the start. So I don't know what's going on with George. He needs to find something in him. Last weekend wasn't too bad. The previous couple weekends were not necessarily even the worst for George, but I think he got overshadowed by the fact that Kimi had such an unlucky streak that George looked better than he actually was. And if Kimi were to just go along without any issues in the last few races, I think we would be talking about George right now in the sense that, what are we gonna do with him? Is it time to, you know, look for somebody else? Because this is ridiculous. Half a second away is not acceptable for two fastest cars. It just isn't. And I really wish George, you know, the best of luck. I hope he finds something inside him, and he needs to do that pretty quick. I know we're talking about, you know, the world title between Kimi and George, and it's like, at some point the conversation might shift away from, you know, the title match to, is George even gonna be at the team? Like, it can happen so fast you won't even see it coming. And to Kimi, just like, congrats, man. Like, absolutely in a fucking league of your own. Nobody was even remotely challenging Kimi today. He just took off. As far as Ferraris goes, they were kind of nowhere today. I don't know if they can do much tomorrow. They're gonna need quite a little bit of luck if they somehow, you know, want to at least be both on the podium. I think one podium is possible. They're P4 and P5 with the grid penalties. I could see, you know, at least one podium being possible. I could see them overtaking maybe Max. George, I don't know. I mean, George is not doing good right now, but George still has a fast car. I guess he just isn't Ferrari's track. It is what it is. And one more fun fact for you before we go. Remember when I said Stroll was 3 seconds away from Albon in P17, which is insane, sure, but also Stroll was 150.1 and Kimi's pole was 144.3. That is 6 seconds. 6 seconds away from pole. 6 seconds. Insane. Just wow, insane. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my reactions to the qualifyings of Belgium Spa 2026, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the race. Take care. Bye bye.